I'm just saying that on these conversations on mental health, on suicide, on self-injury, on even gender ideology, the culture is screaming louder than the church, and the church needs to decide what our message is going to be because they're receiving it. And my big conversation around this is we need to be the ones talking about it first because we're the ones that have hope.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Pastor with Dave Stone. Thank you so much for being a part of this. We look forward to it every single weekend. We drop a brand new episode every Tuesday. It's waiting just there for you. We can't wait for you to be a part of this. And this is something that we look forward to because we see our goal at Focus on the Family as being a resource for Christians, for families, for marriages, for churches. And so we want to come alongside of you as a Christian leader and help you be all that you possibly can. Thanks for joining us today. If you have not already subscribed, wherever you listen to your podcast, please subscribe. If you follow us on YouTube, make certain you follow on the Focused Pastor channel. For my Instagram people out there, hello, I see you. I see that hand. Yes, on Instagram, follow us at Pastor to Pastor Podcast. That's where you can find us. And please share this with other people. We're in our first year. We're growing, but we're growing thanks to you because you're passing these episodes along, whether it's one that I did on weddings or on funerals, or whether it's one of these great conversations with incredible guests that we've had. You all are very good about sharing those with others. So thanks for doing that. And I think today will be one that you're going to want to share as well. As pastors, we're constantly called to care for everybody else, often at the expense of our own health and well-being. And if we're honest, we have to be truly honest and say, hey, there are times in our ministries where we don't really feel fully equipped to handle the ever-changing landscape, the growing mental and emotional health needs of our congregations. I know I feel that way at times. Our guest today, Dr. Mark Mayfield, knows both of those struggles firsthand. He's a former pastor turned counselor and author. He's dedicated his life to helping ministry leaders care for their minds and hearts as deeply as they care for their people. And his newest book, The Mental Health Handbook for Ministry, is changing how churches talk about wholeness and healing. This will be a resource that you will want to have sitting on your desk. I promise you that. So listen in to my conversation with my friend, Dr. Mark Mayfield. Well, today we have a special guest, Dr. Mark Mayfield. You just heard me introduce him to you. And now we have the opportunity to talk with Mark. Mark, you're coming to us from Texas, correct?
Yes, sir. Down where it still feels like summertime. So
we could air this in December, and that would be a true statement.
It would still feel like summertime down here.
Yeah. And you have had a lot of different hats that you have worn through the years. And today we want to just dig in as much as we possibly can on a topic that every Christian leader has been faced with in recent years, and that is just mental health issues.
Yeah.
And I know that we've got some mutual friends. I know that you're an expert in these areas. You probably don't like to be called that, but I know that you are a person who's done so much research. The book that just came out, the Mental Health Handbook for Ministry, that's been a labor of love for you for a number of years. So I know you've poured into that. What did that grow out of? What motivated you to write that book?
Well, I mean, a lot of it was my own journey personally, and then also as a pastor. I felt like my time in undergrad with my Bible and theology and youth ministry degree was good, but when we were faced with some of these real life issues, kids that were dealing with drugs and self-injury and suicidal ideation, I'm sitting there going, I don't know how to respond. And or respond to the questions that were being thrown at me. And so, it was kind of that crossroads point for us, my wife and I, of do we stay where we're at in ministry, or do we kind of go back and get some more education? And that was when the Lord began to pull us back to Denver Seminary, which was a great place to go. Got some really good, again, theology and biblical studies under foundationally, and then that clinical mental health degree that really launched me into, okay, I know where to look, what to do better than I did before.
Well, it's one of those things where I think the church is starting to talk about it more. And we're seeing, of course, a whole lot more issues. I think COVID unveiled a lot of things as far as loneliness goes. The social isolation that took place caused that loneliness to go to epidemic proportions, as the Surgeon General called it. But what have you observed as far as loneliness within church members and just our culture at large?
Well, I think, especially, I mean, if we're talking about the church specifically, I think there are a lot of shoulds that we carry, both as vocational ministry, lay ministers, and just churchgoers in general, that like, I shouldn't be feeling this way. I should be feeling this way, or I should, doesn't the Bible say, count it all joy, my brothers, when this and that, and, and it's almost like we don't want to talk about it because we feel like somehow we're less of a Christian if we go, hey, I'm kind of lonely here. Well, I challenge people all the time when when I was in Colorado Springs, a lot of my caseload was pastors, leaders in the church, and it can be a very lonely place to be when you're fighting for God's people, fighting for truth, engaging in culture wars and different things like that. It can be very isolating. And so I always tell pastors, and I tell, those that are ministering, that we need to set those shoulds down and go, okay, like, is it okay to feel lonely right now? Okay. Yeah, it is. And is that a season, or is that turning into pervasiveness? And one of the things I talk about a lot is we all face bouts of feeling lonely. We see that through Scripture, Job and Elijah and Gideon and Nehemiah and others, and even in the epistles, Paul and Barnabas and Timothy at times, but it's that pervasive loneliness that I think becomes maladaptive.
Yeah, and as I think about over 40 years of ministry, part of the reason that I think there's that loneliness is because isolation comes when a person doesn't have that close network of people around them.
Yeah.
Whether it's a man or a woman that's working as a Christian leader, you've got to have that small group, that accountability, those people who are, there's an affinity because you understand each other's pressures, and you can actually say to one another, hey, this is what I'm going through. And yet, if, in my case, I would answer to a group of elders to let your hair down and to say, hey, I'm struggling with this, or, I could use some help in this area, or I'm just pulled back because I feel like everyone who is my friend is perhaps kissing up or buttering me up for maybe some ulterior motive as opposed to true friendship. Are those some of the things that you've seen?
Yeah, I think the genuineness piece where pastors don't feel like they could be really genuine themselves, because I think in some ways our American culture, our Western culture has created this almost, we've celebritized pastors in some ways. And so we look at them as just lesser than God, right? I mean, and so they can't struggle, or at least we create that unconscious expectation. And I think that's where I worked with I do a lot of consulting with churches. And so I've worked with a lot of elder boards and deacon boards going, how do you create space for your pastor to struggle within community where they're not afraid of their job being taken away from them?
Yes.
And most places have never considered that, or how to do that in a healthy way. There's a lot of things that have happened recently in the public eye that I'm like, maybe we should have put people on sabbatical for a little while to give them a chance to heal before we just fire them. Maybe firing was the way that needed to happen down the road, but like, how about we care for their heart, mind, and soul for a little bit to see if that's the right course of action, instead of kind of being that knee-jerk, type of thing. Now, obviously there's moral failures and things that need that swift response, but I wonder if we change that culture a little bit, that would create some more space for this conversation.
And we find ourselves as Christian leaders now navigating things that are going to always make people upset and mad. I think of the Charlie Kirk assassination and murder, and how I was with 6 pastors the very next days and spent 3 days with them. And to see them each get lambasted from both sides of the aisle and both sides of the equation by people within their church, time and time again. And so the whole time we were together, the emails were just pinging, and they would just say, I got another hate mail. I got another one. I got another one. And this one's on this side and this one's on that side. And it's a tough world to navigate, and it can wreak havoc with a person's mental health. By the way, I need to pay you for a counseling session when this is over?
No.
Does this count as one?
We're friends now, so it's not counseling. It's just friendly talk is what we'll call that.
Good. Well, all of us, we've got hundreds. We actually have thousands that are listening to this that will benefit from this friendship session with you, Mark. And so thank you for letting us into your office and have a seat on the couch. And just as we listen to you, I can't help but think one of the struggles that I think Christian leaders go through, you alluded to it, and that is that our congregation thinks that we are better than we really are. And you hinted at that when you talked about we've celebritized pastors and Christian leaders, and that's not a healthy thing. And so when that comes along, we have to make certain that we don't embrace that and that we actually deflect that. And at the same time, we still need to be that spiritual voice of authority on behalf of the Lord, even as fallen and broken men and women who have struggles. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think we do that, and we figure out how to do that well. That creates openings for staff and for congregants to go, I can actually be myself too, and not be an Instagram Christian, and show up all put together. I tell this to pastors all the time. I said, if you really want to begin to, a simple step to begin to create a place that receives people's as they are, is don't ask somebody how they're doing unless you've got 10 to 15 minutes to sit and listen to their response. I think we create this fast-paced Instagram kind of Christianity where we're like, hey, how you doing? I'm fine, blessed, better than I deserve, and they're dying on the inside.
Yeah.
And I think just a quick and easy way to switch that up is, no, how are you doing? I've got some time. I want to know. Like, tell me what's going on. And then you create opportunity for story to be shared. Even if you don't have a solution, they're able to talk and kind of get it off their chest a little bit. And hopefully you'll have, a life group or small group or someplace they can go. But if not, that little bit goes a long way.
Yeah. And just to have somebody listen to their story. Mm-hmm. And like you said, there might not be a solution that they have to offer, but it's therapeutic in a sense just for them to be able to get it off their chest. Yeah. I have a burden, not just for the emotional health of Christian leaders, but also for their family members. Nowadays, with all the talk about mental health issues and things, I have children and grandchildren, and it is a different world than when I raised my kids. And so my heart goes out to younger kids with the pressures of social media, bullying, a variety of different challenges and pressures that I never faced. I know that some of your love and passion to help people grew out of some of your childhood experiences. I'll let you share a little bit and expound on that a bit.
Yeah, no, I dealt with being different. I mean, obviously we all are different, and but you know how kids, especially in middle school, hone in on the different. So I looked like a white version of Steve Urkel, if you remember the Family Matters TV show.
I do. I do. I'm right there with you. So I'm anxious to.
Yeah. So the suspenders.
We could have been in a support group together,
right? I mean, maybe we should. I could definitely use it. The big glasses, the braces, but 2 left feet, just real awkward. I would say things just like, why? Where did you come from? That come from, I look at some of my clothes that my mom had. I'm like, why did you let me out of the house looking like that? But went to a Christian school, small Christian school, and it was the Christian type of Christian school that parents would send their kids to if they got kicked out of public school, right? So it was like, it's the Reformed Christian school. And a lot of the young men that were in my class were just relentless bullies. And it was words, it was stuffed in lockers, it was swirlies thrown in trash cans. And, I began to throw a lot of physiological symptoms. So pervasive migraines, not sleeping, So my parents, started treating the physical side of things, which, EKGs, spinal taps, MRIs, blood draws, just to kind of go, what's going on with the headaches. And there were headaches that would lead to, at times, nausea and throwing up. And I mean, I didn't think I was making these things up.
Sure.
But it was my body trying to reconcile not wanting to be in that place of abuse and bullying. And really for me, the straw that broke the camel's back, I was giving a presentation in class. I was 6th grade, so 12 years old. And the teacher stepped out for a second, and the main bully came up and pulled my pants down, underwear and all, in front of the class. And just left humiliated
so sorry.
and not knowing how to respond. And I just kind of went deeper inward. And one of the nights that I was at home, I can just vividly remember this, walked downstairs and sat in front of the medicine cabinet just going, and I don't know if I was active. Like, somebody asked me this question the other day, were you actively suicidal? I'm like, I don't know. I think I just wanted the pain to end. And so I thought, well, Tylenol takes care of pain. So I downed a bottle of Tylenol and went back to sleep. And it was reacting. It had reacted to something else that I was taking. And I woke up just in excruciating pain about 15, 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later. I rushed. My parents took me to the hospital, drank that lovely charcoal coating drink that goes down and kind of neutralizes everything. And I'm grateful for the Christian neurologist, because he pulled my dad aside and said, he goes, I don't think this is physiological. I think it's psychological. And so here is a number to a Christian psychologist. Go talk to him. Let's get your son the help that he needs. And he made a statement. He goes, at least this is how my dad tells it. Take him to counseling, and you probably should be a part of it too. And that changed the trajectory of my life, in that met with a psychologist, met with a psychiatrist, was put on Prozac, and then finally had somebody that kind of heard me, saw me, and began to let me tell my story and work things out. And my dad began to get it. He was the principal of that Christian school.
Really?
But he began to get it, and our relationship began to grow. He wasn't as hard on me as he used to be. I was, emotions were a little bit more allowed. And our relationship, we started playing golf. We started running together. I, became really involved in baseball. And that summer of my 9th grade year, going into my 9th grade year, our church allowed the dads to baptize their kids, and my dad was able to baptize me, rededicated my life, and kind of set me on that trajectory of going, I don't want anybody to ever feel that way. And so I thought it was going to, I thought I was going to be I'm going to be that youth pastor that's 60 years old and still doing things. And, that lasted 5 years, but,
that's good.
It's good. And I still feel like in a lot of ways, I'm still doing youth ministry. I'm still working with teens and families. I'm still helping, and just in a different way. But, and suicidology and self-injury has been something that I've been focused on for a very long time, especially when I was in Colorado. And some of the new books that are going to be coming out through Focus are crisis manuals on that very topic for churches and for parents, because we just are left just totally in a mess, not knowing what to do and how to respond when our kid is struggling at that level.
Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing that story with us, because it gives us a greater understanding in the two pieces of the person saying to your dad, hey, you probably need some Christian counseling, and you probably need to be there too. Boy, there is something to be said when a father and a son begin to connect. And, what's that old Paul Harvey statement, the way you spell love to a kid is Time.
Yep.
Time. And for him to be able to understand where you're coming from, to be less hard on you and to be more tender rather than tough, and to find those things that you can do together, boy, that's invaluable. And to the moms and dads who are listening to this right now, perhaps what your child needs and your teen needs is just somebody to come alongside and just to put an arm around them, to be there with them, to spend time with them, to make themselves available. And there is nothing wrong with taking your kids to see a counselor. It's one of the healthiest things. It's also preventative, I feel like, in so many different ways. And you can get out ahead of things rather than when it, becomes a little bit later, and it's in some cases it's too late. You referred to suicide and the taking of that bottle of pills, and praise the Lord that they were able to get to you quickly with that. I know that there are pastors and Christian leaders who sometimes tend to shy away from the subject of suicide or self-harm. And what would you say to them? Because let me just give you my own experience. I've preached probably 3 sermons on suicide. I've talked about it numerous times, but it's in over 40 years of preaching. And one time I preached on suicide, Mark, and got a lot of good comments on it. Boy, it's so good that you talked about this. You hit it head on. And then that week, there was a man in his 20s who took his own life, who had been in there and who had heard it. And for the weeks to come, I just wrestled with, did I somehow bring this concept or this idea up to the forefront of his mind? Yeah. And I don't want to say I felt guilt or shame over that, but I did wrestle with a lot of questions of what if he hadn't heard that message? Would he still have done that? So what do you say to the people who try to avoid the subject for fear that it might, cause more problems than solution?
I'll say this first. The culture is screaming louder than the church is on this conversation. And so, again, I am a fierce advocate for the church. I love the church. I'm in the church. I want the church to be better in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of things that the church is doing really well. So don't hear me be a critic in that sense of like it's all bad. I'm just saying that on these conversations on mental health, on suicide, on self-injury, on even gender ideology, the culture is screaming louder than the church. And the church needs to decide what our message is going to be because they're receiving it. And my big conversation around this is we need to be the ones talking about it first because we're the ones that have hope. We have a pathway to hope. The culture does not have a pathway to hope. And I tell my students at Colorado Christian this all the time when I'm working in internship and practicum. If somebody is set on killing themselves, you need to do everything you can to prevent that from happening. But if they don't change their mind, that is not something that you need to own because you've done everything you can. One of the simplest phrases I tell a client that's dealing with suicide is, you don't have my permission to kill yourself. And that I've had kids and parents look at me going like, what do you, okay. Like okay. I didn't know that was not an option. Well,
what a great line. You don't have my permission to kill yourself.
Yeah. And so, what I will tell people that are worried about talking about this, it's going to be talked about whether we talk about it or not. And I think I would prefer us to be the ones to talk about it because, like I said, we're the ones that have that pathway to hope.
Yeah, that's really well put. And I know that's at the heart of really what your whole ministry is all about. Your writing, your speaking, your counseling, it all comes back to this great desire that you have, Mark, to equip the church. And you want to be a resource to them. And that's why you did the mental health handbook. I know that it's meant to not be something that is read and then set aside and, I read this book, but you see it more as a manual, as something that's a resource that you sit on your desk. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, I've told the pastor recently, I said, put it next to your commentaries on your desk. If you use, if you're like me and like the hard copy
still
commentaries,
the paper,
not on paper copies, not on your computer, or put it next to your study Bible. And I said, here's why, is because you're going to have somebody come into your office that are going to be displaying things that you're not quite sure on how to handle. And the book talks about it. I mean, we're anywhere from depression to bipolar to personality disorders to LGBTQ plus to eating disorders to addiction to medication. I mean, we try to hit almost every topic and to read through it. I mean, I've actually have a couple people that I know right now that are reading through it because they're just so fascinated by it. But tab it. Go get some tabs at Staples or Office Depot and tab it like you would your Bible. And just when somebody comes in and they've just said, hey, Pastor, man, I'm having a hard time getting out of bed. I'm struggling with depression. You're going, Okay, and what I will tell a pastor is that first meeting, just listen, lean in, ask good questions, be curious. Don't feel like you have to have pressure to give any kind of answer. And then when they walk out, open the book up and read on depression. What is it? What is depression? What does the Bible say about depression? And then we really provide extra resources and kind of what to do next when you're above your pay grade or, whatever. Make sure that you create that good referral network within your community of good Christian, biblically centered counselors.
And we have a lot of different people who are listening right now. I'm trying to put myself in their shoes as they're riding in the car, or they're working out, listening to this, or maybe they're out for a jog or a walk, and they get asked questions that they do feel like are above their pay grade.
Right.
What are some of the common mistakes that you see church leaders make in counseling situations, and how do they know when to pass it on to a professional counselor and when to try to muddle their way through?
So I always say this, the arguments or points of contention that I find sometimes with pastors is, I just want them to make sure they're in their word and they're praying and that their faith is strong. And I don't disagree with that at all. I think that that's important, what we call protective factors for people that are struggling. That might not be the right response in the moment. So the right response in the moment might know, well, tell me about your devotional time. They're in the midst of an anxiety crisis. Okay, that's a good question because that's a good protective factor, but it's not the right time, right? So I think that's what I see a lot of good questions at the wrong time. I also see a church or a pastor that has not intentionally built out their referral support network. So they get to a place where they have somebody in their office that they're struggling and they don't have anybody that they trust that they can refer to. So they think, well, I'll just handle it. And then it becomes kind of not a nightmare, I guess, in some ways, because it becomes more of a counseling, like clinical session than it does a pastoral session. But here's what I'll tell pastors. Build out your network. Maybe not you, maybe have somebody on your team, a volunteer, somebody you trust. Even if you're a smaller church, get somebody that you trust to go out and to build a network of a psychiatrist, psychologist, counselor, even medical doctors that you feel comfortable referring people to. And then here's what I say. If you've got the time, don't just say, hey, I'm going to refer you to this person. Good luck. Godspeed. Go with them to their first session.
Wow.
Sit with them in that support piece and then continue to meet with them from a spiritual side of things. I think where churches really struggle at times is they're like, you know what? I've checked the box. They're being cared for by a mental health professional. Great. But research shows we need 5 safe people in our lives for us to be healthy. And so what if they have that as a counselor and you remain that safe person for them from a spiritual standpoint? And so I think those are some ahas that I see in pastors as I'm talking that they've just not ever thought through.
I never heard that, Mark. 5 safe people to be healthy. Well, that's such a good encouragement. And again, we're talking to Christian leaders who everybody sees them, puts them on a pedestal, sees them leading whatever the ministry might be in their church. And so they're put up here. And so sometimes when they're going through this emotional stress or these difficult times or depression, they pull back. And I had a counselor say to me a therapist say to me when I was going through my depression a few years ago, Mark, he said, your depression will lead you either to isolation or to addiction. One of those two things. And for me, it was isolation. And I just found myself pulling away from people.
Yeah.
And so to come alongside of a person and to say what you just said, I will go with you to your first appointment. I mean, you talk about going the extra mile, as Jesus said. That is really, really powerful.
But isn't that what we're supposed to be about, right?
Yeah.
And maybe you can't, as the lead pastor, you can't be the one that always does that, but create a team around you of people that can. And this is really pervasive. Cigna, big healthcare company, did a study in 2024, and they said this. There's a lot of stats, but the two that really I like to hone in on is, let's say we have a church of 1,000. 54% feel of that 1,000, so 540 people feel like no one knows them well. And then of that same 1,000, 36% or 360 people felt like they had no one to turn to in a time of need. And this is of 20,000 participants.
Yeah.
So
which
it's
is
not
why
just
I see the huge value in pushing people in and encouraging into some type of small group.
Yes.
Some type of, whether it's a men's group, women's group, couples group. We talk about it a lot on this show, the value of that. And that is the church being the church in that smaller segment. And boy, if you feel like you're alone, you're probably going to struggle getting through some of these challenges. But if you got people beside you, it's unbelievable. It's what our small group always talks about. If it weren't for the people around this room, I don't know what I would have done.
Right.
That's what I hear constantly. I want to change gears a little bit, and I know that you wrote this book as a resource. I know it's going to be used for so much good that way. I love your idea of when you talked about putting tabs on there so you can come back and say, okay, here's a topic. Now I can address this better with this person. Sometimes you know that ahead of time. Sometimes you don't. When it comes to the church historically, I think there's been this fear of talking about some of these topics. And now I would just say from my own perspective, I have seen a lot of churches that are starting to have sermon series on mental health issues. Is that something that you hope other churches will adopt and will begin talking about this more openly? What are some of the benefits that come from hitting these topics head on rather than taking them on one at a time in the pastor's office and counseling that way? What's the benefits that you see when pastors talk about this from the pulpit?
Yeah, it's creating a culture of care. One of the things when I get into doing some consulting with churches, I ask them right off the bat, what is your theology of suffering? And I get kind of a third eye look sometimes, like, what do you mean what my theology of suffering is? I'm like, well, your theology of suffering has to be discussed and foundationalized before you can actually develop a theology of care. So just throwing, a couple sermons a month or a year at this is not going to do much. I mean, it's better than some, right? I mean, so we'll take September and May, the mental health months, and we'll do some topic conversations there and that kind of stuff. But if we have a really good theology of suffering, then if we're an exegetical verse by verse church, if we're going through the book of Galatians, there might be some practical conversations around this that present themselves in Galatians 2 or 3. If we're going through First Kings and we get to Elijah and, his lovely ups and downs from Mount Carmel to Mount Horeb and everywhere in between, we can talk about what it's like to feel isolated and lonely and depressed and scared and, want to give up and die. And so I think it's not, I want churches to understand that it's not these blips in times. What does it look like to weave this together through kind of the golden thread of how they do ministry and how they do church? What that does, then it creates a palpable safety for people walking into the doors going, oh, I'm seen, I'm valued, I'm loved just as I am. And this is a place that I can get healed. Well, isn't that what the church is all about anyways?
Yeah, it's supposed to be a safe place. It's it's a place where we'll always, on our marketing pieces, and say, hey, everybody's welcome here. You are loved here. We'll say a variety of catchphrases, but the bottom line is when that person walks out the door, do they feel loved? And do they feel accepted? Do they feel like they could actually talk to someone? I was preaching at a church out of state recently, and a gal came up to me, and I could just tell I had talked a little bit about some emotional health issues in my message, just very, very briefly, Mark. And she just said, thank you for sharing that story. And then she kind of paused, and I could see her lip quivering. And so I just reached over and I said, can I give you a hug? And I hugged her, and when I hugged her, it was just like the waterworks just opened up. I have no idea what I had uncovered, but she had moved to this state. This was her first time to this church. I told a story that somehow tied in exactly with where she was, and it was pretty evident to me that she was going through depression, and to be able to match her up with someone at that church, and then for her to reach out to me later on social media and to say, I went to this group and now I'm getting plugged in and now I have friends here. It becomes a game changer. But I feel like there are a lot of Christian leaders who are in the same position as that young gal was. And I think that sometimes in our Christian leadership, whether it's workaholic tendencies, whether it's people pleasing, whatever it might be, the emotional health and mental health of the Christian leaders at times suffers. I know that you have dealt with this through your counseling practice a great deal, through your work with Colorado Christian as well. But how can pastors guard their own mental and emotional health while still being a leader within their congregation?
Yeah, I love that question. I think whether you are in crisis or not, go find a counselor and have them on speed dial, and so there's a lot of, I do a lot of counseling. I'm licensed in Colorado, licensed in Texas, so I can see patients or clients in those states. But I do a lot of coaching as well, right? And so I look at counseling as kind of, I don't know how I got here, and I need to figure that out. So I need to unwind kind of the past to figure out how I arrived here. But coaching is kind of like, I know how I got here. I just don't want to be here. How do I get moving forward? And need that encouragement and tools. And so I do a lot of coaching with pastors too. But having a coach or a counselor that you have on your side that you can meet with at least once a month, elders, if you're listening, pay for it for your pastor and their family. Don't put that burden on them, and get them an opportunity to have that third party person that is not a part of their church, that is not biased, that can engage in these honest conversations. Get them out to places like Hope Restored through Focus and some of these the retreats. Get out there, pay for that once a year. I'm really involved with the Cathys and the Chick-fil-A Foundation at WindShape, in Georgia. Like, get out there and give them a weekend away to get their marriages straight. Whether they need it or not, like, you need it. So that kind of investment, I think, is really important from a church standpoint. And don't be ashamed or afraid that if your kids are struggling, go, you know what? I need that. If they don't have 5 safe people, let me find one. Let me get a counselor. I know that Focus has got great lists in their counseling, and they do all the vetting for you. So why go to, let Focus help with that as well.
You should be doing this podcast, Mark. I mean, you should be the host of Pastor to Pastor, because what you just shared in the last 2 minutes, I mean, that's exactly why they're, just like you wrote the book to be a resource. That's what Focus on the Family wants to be for Christian leaders and for families, is how can we be a resource? And, man, I get emotional when you start saying, your first answer was, go find a counselor.
Yep.
Get in that habit of going and seeing them with regularity. And, I just want you to know that for decades, I think, I prided myself on the fact that I had never gone to see a counselor. Just so arrogant and so messed up now to look back at that and to think, when a person went through depression, in the back of my mind as I'm talking to them, I'm wanting to say, suck it up, buttercup. Life is tough all the way around, and just deal with it. We all have rough seasons of life, but then I went through depression, and it's amazing how your tune changes in those moments. And for me, just to be able to say to my congregation this simple phrase, I started seeing a counselor, and I got more response and more emails in the positive frame after sharing that than any other message that I ever had. My wife's phone started blowing up that afternoon from women saying, my husband is going to go see a counselor. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I would just say to any Christian leader who is going through a rough time or is going through a great time, find yourself so that you got some balance. You've got some line there in the sand that says, okay, this is what it's like when I'm healthy. This is what it's like when I'm not healthy. Go see someone. Find a Christian counselor, someone that you can just kind of keep things moving in the right direction. So thank you for what you said with that encouragement, because just getting permission. And I love what you said about the elders who are listening. We have a lot of elders who listen to this program, this podcast. And for you to give the freedom to your Christian leaders on your staff and say, hey, just know that this is always available to you. And if you can't afford it, the church will gladly pay, because you're always pouring yourself out for others. We want your cup to be full.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. And that comes out in the quality of our ministry. And so I won't say the date, time, not names removed, scrubbed from any of this to be taken back. So I don't want to put anybody on blast, but I experienced something very difficult, about a while ago. My dad was almost died from a botched prostate cancer surgery, and dealt with some time in and out of the hospital. I think was in the hospital and rehab for something like 60 days, 65 days, ICU, that kind of stuff. And we had not been in church. We were just, on kind of this fight, flight, or freeze mode, just survival mode. And we had walked back into church one day, and went to a rather large church, and one of the pastors that I had known fairly well, hey, Mark, good to see you. How you doing? And I said, well, it's been probably the hardest 6 months of my life. Oh, that's nice. And turned around and walked away.
Oh,
looked right past me, didn't see me, didn't hear any of that kind of stuff.
Just
and
a
I'm sitting there
perfunctory.
going, yeah. And I'm sitting there going, okay, I'm a counselor. I've worked through my own traumas. I've done my trauma therapy. I've done all this kind of stuff. That really, I'm glad it was me and not somebody else. That really hurt. Well, come to find out later, that individual was in a deep, dark place themselves. And so to the conversation that we're having, and it is, Pastor, you have to take care of yourself first. The elders listening, the deacons listening, you have to take care of your pastors, because if they are not healthy, anything that we've talked about today is not going to happen. It's not going to stick. It's not going to be effective. They have to be healthy first to be able to have healthy ministry. And we saw that happen. And it breaks my heart now seeing that, the hindsight piece of this individual was struggling just as much, if not more than I was, and they had no capacity. And it hurt. It stung. I had to work through some forgiveness and some healing around that. But the context of this person was dealing with something too. We have to make sure that our pastors are healthy, that their wives are healthy, that their families are healthy. It's a whole package thing. And I'll stand by that, and I'll use that megaphone to say that.
Well, you tied it together so well, because praise the Lord, it was you and someone who was a trained counselor that knew how to spot what was taking place. But what a great reminder, because we feel terrible hearing that. We hurt for you when we hear that. But the Christian leader was empty himself, and so he was just asking the questions, but not even listening to the answers. And we can get to that point if we're not taking care of our own emotional health. And what a great reminder. The book is called The Mental Health Handbook for Ministry, and it is available now. Dr. Mark Mayfield put that together. And Mark, I can't wait to use it as a resource and have it sitting on my desk. And we can't thank you enough for all that you're doing. How can people find you?
Yeah, I obviously Amazon and Baker Publishing House is where this book lies. I've got a couple other books through Nav Press, but my website is mentalhealthmadesimple.life. Mentalhealthmadesimple.life. The goal is that we create simple resources for families and pastors to utilize in their congregations and churches. So check us out. Let us know how we could be of service to you. And just grateful for the ministry of Focus on the Family.
Well, thank you for this counseling session that you've done for me, and I'll let several thousand others listen in on it as well. But I appreciate the fact that you approached all of this from the standpoint of, hey, I just want to come alongside and equip and help church leaders. And let me just assure you, that's what you've done today. I'm a note taker. What can I say? I got a lot of notes, right? Dr. Mayfield shares how his own experience with bullying and depression led to a suicide attempt at the age of 12. And I don't know about you, but it was tough to hear that story. I applaud him for giving us a peek into how it is that God used that. You know, we say the phrase, God never wastes a hurt, and God didn't waste that one. And look at all the good that has come out of that. Look at the relationship that Mark has with his father. So many good things came out of that really difficult season. He reminded us that loneliness is one of the biggest epidemics in ministry, and that pastors, Christian leaders often carry silent burdens out of fear of looking weak. I know I've struggled with that at times. If I pull the veil back too much and let people see my struggles, then they won't trust me as a leader, or I won't look confident. And yet there's something incredible that happens when we do that. Mark had a great line when he said, the culture is screaming louder than the church. Too many times I think the church takes the easy way out. And as Christian leaders, we just don't want to ruffle people's feathers, so we don't address things. And our church is begging for ammunition to use against this culture in order to be able to handle some of these controversial issues and things that are taking place. When he said at the end, pastors, whether you're in crisis or not, go find a counselor. And there's great wisdom in that. And I'm telling you, I do know this, that Mark's new book, The Mental Health Handbook for Ministry, is going to be an excellent resource for you. It can be of help to you. It runs the whole gamut of a variety of different emotional health issues that pastors face and that people in the congregation face. And if you are looking for Christian counseling, Focus on the Family has resources available to you. You can click on our show notes at Christian Counselors Network, and you'll find that Focus has ways where you can find a counselor in your area that has been vetted, that they trust, who could be a big help to you. The story that I want to share with you today to close us out ties in with some of the emotional challenges and things that we face on a regular basis. And it's because I think that Satan really does want us to throw in the towel and just to give up. And Mark talked about being in front of that medicine cabinet and just wanting to escape. And I think that there are different times that our members feel that way. There's even times that we as Christian leaders just feel like, I think I'm done with this. I'd like to just check out from what it is that God has called me to. But we have to remember our heavenly calling. This came through to me. This past week, I was speaking at a conference in Scottsdale, and one of the other speakers was a woman by the name of Tammy Jo Schultz. And she was one of the first female fighter pilots to ever serve in the U.S. Navy. And she later became a Southwest airline pilot, and she made headlines back in 2018 when she safely landed a Boeing 737 after the engine exploded. It was heading from LaGuardia to Dallas Love Field, and she told the gripping story of the chaotic event and the instant when some debris from the engine explosion came flying through a window, killing a passenger and leaving a gaping hole in the side of the airplane in row 14. And Tammy said that after she was able to get the plane out of a nosedive and somehow get it limping its way sideways through the air, in the midst of the crisis, she got on the intercom and she said, "This is your captain speaking. We're going to go to Philly and we will land there safely." It's quite a story. The landing itself was miraculous. But she said that I later learned from the passengers that when they heard that announcement, when I said that we're going to go to the airport in Philly, somehow it changed everything for the passengers on that flight. This is what she said. She said, having a destination gave them hope. And the same is true for the Christian. When Christians are going through difficult times, when it feels like there's no way out, when it feels like there's no hope, there is the consistent and constant voice of the Holy Spirit reminding us that this world is not our home. We're just a passing through. We've got a heavenly home that waits for us. Philippians chapter 3, verse 20 says, "But our citizenship is in heaven, and we eagerly await a Savior from there, the Lord Jesus Christ." So while you live on earth, remember your heavenly destination. And even when things get tough and you feel like quitting and you feel like just giving up, remember that Jesus never gave up because he wanted you to be able to experience heaven someday because of his blood on the cross and because of his forgiveness of sins that he offers. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Boy, it's been a good day today. It's really good to hear Mark, that reassuring, calm voice of confidence, pointing us in the direction of Jesus Christ. Thanks for listening to Pastor. Share it with somebody else. We drop a brand new episode every Tuesday that's designed to encourage, inspire, and to challenge you, because we know that leadership can be lonely. And that's why we call this Pastor to Pastor. It's for a reason. It's to remind you, you're not alone. Until next time, I'm Dave Stone saying, God bless.